right. So welcome to this panel on New Victorian Contemporary Theatre and Victorian Plays and Characters. And we have three speakers in this session. And first speaker is Victoria Duckett, who is Associate Professor of Film and Deputy Director of the Deakin Motion Lab in the School of Communication and Creative Arts at Deakin University in Melbourne. She is author of an award-winning monograph, Seeing Sarah Barnard, Performance in Silent Film, and editor of Researching Women in Silent Cinema, New Findings of Perspectives. Most recently, she has published Transnational Trailblazers and of Early Cinema, Sarah Barnard, Gabrielle Rigan, and Miss Ducket, with the University of California Press. Published this year. Victoria serves on the editorial board of Feminist Media Histories and 19th Century Theatre and Film. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay. First, thank you, Laura, Rosario, Victoria, for hosting such a great conference, and all the Valencia team. It's really great to be here, even though it's the second one and I wasn't here for the first. I've over the last few days with the papers and especially also the keynotes, I can see a lot of overlaps with my own work, and I hope that some of you can see inversely a bit of overlap with my work that I'm presenting today. So today I discuss three plays that have recently been performed in Melbourne. In chronological order, or rather in the order in which I saw them, they're Kit Williams, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which was performed by Erin Jean Norval and first staged at the Sydney Theatre Company in 2020. I saw that in 2022 in Melbourne. Sarah Goods's Cyrano de Bergerac, which was written by the lead actress during lockdown, Virginia Gay, and first performed at the Melbourne Theatre Company in September 2022. And Teresa Rebeck, who's an American, but was brought to Australia in 2023 by Kate Mulvaney, and that's the Bernhardt Hamlet. So through these works, I argue that in Melbourne, we've seen a resurgence of female playwrights and performers working on subjects that re-engage the late 19th century European stage. Exploring a moment that is associated with first wave feminism, the plays focus on lead actresses who perform in cross-dress. Using physical camp and comedy to showcase historic rereadings of the late 19th century, these women represent the history and achievements of theatrical mavericks and entrepreneurs who helped redefine the global entertainment industries in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In the centenary of Bernhardt's death, because she died in 1923, I think it's important to celebrate this intergenerational bridge between theatrical women now and then, as well as theatre in Australia and Europe. These plays enable new audiences to appreciate theatre and performance history at a temporal and geographic distance from Europe. At the same time that Melbourneian theatre builds new awareness of the late 19th century stage, these plays also highlight significant changes in the relationship between theatre and film, stage and screen, and our understanding of the achievements and affordances of the transnational theatrical actress. I flag that these contemporary Australian performances emerge evidently in a specific located place, Melbourne, and frame our relationship to the 19th century stage and screen in a located manner. We have most obviously the integration of screen and film in The Picture of Dorian Gray. Through this, Kit Williams is regarded as revolutionising the Australian stage with what is commonly called his cine theatre, and I'll talk about this later. We also have the late 19th century European theatre, imagine it always in terms of England or France, presented to audiences in terms of actresses essaying male roles, Dorian Gray, Cyrano de Bergerac, Hamlet. In each of these works, performances brim with physical feminist fun. Because of time limitations, I focus on The Picture of Dorian Gray and Bernhardt Hamlet. So that's Dorian Gray, and I'll be showing a bit more in a sec. In the context of the picture of Dorian Gray, I'm particularly interested in the use of film on the live theatrical stage. I see the feminist genesis for this integration of stage and screen in the late work and careers of 19th century actresses who bridged stage and screen, not necessarily in a single performance, but certainly across a single career. In Bernhardt Hamlet, I instead focus on the way in which Bernhardt's cross-dressing as Hamlet is represented as an event with ramifications that echo into the cinematic 20th century. As the work recounts, it was Bernhardt's decision to play Hamlet that triggers her lover, this is within the narrative of this play, Edmund Rostand, to write L'Aiglon for her. At the play's end, Bernhardt is shown, sword in hand, talking of being recorded on a new kind of photograph. The play concludes here, with Kate Mulvaney in front of Hamlet, now recorded on, quote, the flickering strobe of the silent movie, end quote. So I'm going to talk now about the use of film and live performance. So in the picture of Dorian Gray, Norval plays 26 different characters to tremendous effect over an uninterrupted 2 hours. These characters are developed, amplified, framed, and isolated and/or extended on different screens on the stage. There are hanging LED screens, moving panels, split screens, all separately creating the kaleidoscopic and changing character of Dorian Gray. Kit Williams, speaking of the process of integrating stage and screen, describes the work as cinetheatre. He explains that in the place of traditional scenery are visuals created on the fly. Norval works simultaneously in front of the audience and before on-stage camera crews. Video is instantaneously fed to the large screens that move in all directions, allowing for multiple images, live image manipulation, split screens, and powerful close-ups. It is the choreography of the camera people on stage as much as the actress's capacity to change characters so fluidly, which is astounding. Celebrated by theatre critics as genius and a revolution of the stage, the picture of Dorian Gray won Best Production, Best Direction, Best Stage Design, and Best Performance in a Leading Role at the 2022 Sydney Theatre Awards. Norval's acting, described as an Olympic act of performance, is regarded as the defining performance of a generation. Now, here's Kit Williams talking. I'll just give you a little bit of what he says about it.
My name is Kit Williams, and I'm the writer and director of this production of the picture of Dorian Gray. It's sort of like live performance remixed for the digital age. We have on stage with us a camera crew who shoots our central performer live every night and allows them to play all of the characters inside Oscar Wilde's novel. The creative team and I have really deployed some of the most innovative and exciting theatrical and cinematic techniques to make this possible. Over the course of 2 hours, they play over 26 characters, many of them live, some of them pre-recorded. And as I mentioned, we use a whole host of different technical magic tricks in order to have them performing with themselves, sometimes in scenes with 7 different versions of themselves.
Okay, so that you get the idea, I hope. Okay, good. Okay, so Williams and Norval's work is exciting, not just because the choreography of liveness includes the manipulation and projection of recorded and live video on screen. The work is a one-woman show. Perhaps more significantly, the work represents a comeback to the stage and to public life after Norval's 2017 involvement in the defamation trial brought against Daily Telegraph by actor Geoffrey Rush. Rush brought legal action after the newspaper reported that the Sydney Theatre Company had received a complaint about the Hollywood actor's behaviour during his time starring in production of King Lear, an allegation which Rush denied. Norval wasn't named by the Daily Telegraph, but she couldn't remain anonymous for the trial, which Rush won. The court rejected the newspaper's truth defence, awarding Rush $2.9 million in damages. Norval has since explained that, quote, "My experience was not me too, it was her too. My choice to participate was taken away from me by the media," end quote. We therefore have in this play a national celebration of feminist agency from 2 perspectives. each positioning the picture of Dorian Gray at the forefront of creative and social change. On the one hand, it is technically novel, pushing the choreographic limits of contemporary theatre. On the other hand, it becomes a platform for feminist theatrical agitation, an actress's affront at efforts to silence and control her, whether through legal or professional means, have been met in a uniquely creative way. Interestingly, when the picture of Dorian Gray was first brought to the stage, it was associated with the creative use of projection and screens with women as well as with transnational theatre. First published in Lippincott's monthly magazine in 1890, Oscar Wilde's work was brought to the theatre in 1913, dramatised by the lesbian American author, poet and playwright Grace Constant Lounsbury for Dutch actor Lou Tellegen in London. In the 23 years between its first publication and its adaptation to the vaudeville stage are a host of famous events. The homophobic scandals that surrounded its reception, Oscar Wilde's court trials and imprisonment, as well as his early death in 1900. What is most interesting, in my view, about this first iteration of the work on the stage is that Lou Tellegen was a stage and screen actor, a star who for 2 years worked as a member of Sarah Bernhardt's theatre in Paris, was famously engaged as her younger lover for a number of years, and also performed in her first two longer films, Camille 1911 and her feature film Queen Elizabeth of 1912, and that's him in the famous death scene in Camille. So when Lou Tellegen played Picture of Dorian Gray in 1913 in London, there was mention of P.T. Selbert's miracle pictures being used for special effect, and these were advertised in the program. What this involved is not clear, but certainly it included projected film. As the London Evening News recounted, quote, "The picture that is being used in the play is a special portrait of M. Lou Tellegen, the actor impersonating Dorian Gray, painted by Mr. Verker Hamilton, as to how and by what means the picture changes in full view of the audience. That is the secret of the inventor of the process, Mr. Selbert and the vaudeville theatre." So my point is that film was already used in the first iteration on the stage. So the play wasn't a success. The Globe, for example, stated that Lounsbury had laid, quote, "violent hands, unrelieved by a single touch of drama," on Wilde's work, and noted that the audience comprised of, quote, "those effeminate-looking beings who are in no way representative of the better side of the cult of Oscar Wilde." While we can trace a film theatre overlap from novel into the failed first version of the Picture of Dorian Gray on stage, it is the link between the development of Norval's world across and in film on stage and the work of the late 19th century actress in the emerging entertainment industries that I want to highlight. This point, that the late 19th century stage and early film were intertwined fields, and that the creative, financial, entrepreneurial overlaps, interconnections, and borrowings were fertile and productive, has long been made by many scholars. I'm not new here. Many of you all know the work of David Mayer, as well as possibly the scholars he supported, such as Gwendolyn Waltz, who has explained, for instance, that film was not only used in the theatre, but freed the scenic scope of the late 19th and early 20th stage. Waltz has also explored the heritage of film illusions through the use of early film in stage conjuring acts, although she says nothing of Selbert. More recently, in 19th century theatre and film, the journal, Matthew Solomon has credited a range of film historians, David Mayer, Ben Brewster, Leah Jacobs, Frank Ben, Frank Kessler, and so on, for their work in developing connections between stage and screen. Solomon argues that variety actor Max Linder's combination of cinema and theatre was liminal. And what he means by this is that cinematic forms were embedded into the theatrical mise-en-scène of Linder's French music hall performances. And he says we therefore have to see his work as cinema sketches. Solomon explains that these performances began with the scene on the screen only to finish on the stage. Linda would, for example, be shown on film hurrying to the theatre. After a series of mishaps and adventures, the lights would turn on, Linda would appear bedraggled and then on the stage. Departing from these questions of film periodization and also departing from discussions focused on the applications filmed held in variety and popular theatres, because inevitably we end up with often male examples and male scholars, and I've got nothing against that, but we're talking about the actresses, obviously. I instead highlight what Annette Foster calls the careerographies of late 19th century stage actresses. In her book, Women in the Silent Cinema, Histories of Fame and Fate, Foster contends that the consideration of an actress's career is best understood across stage and screen. She states, careerographies are multi-layered and interdisciplinary, as well as affirmative and non-hierarchical, and we have been speaking about that in this forum. They do not necessarily privilege cinema over other disciplines and media, and they reflect the spirit of the times in professionalism, entrepreneurial practices, and shifts within and among a range of discipline and media. In her book, Foster takes 3 different but related case studies. She examines the careers of the Dutch actress Adrienne Salser, the French actress Musidora, and the Canadian actress Mel Shipman. Foster demonstrates that these actresses learned their métier in practice before acting in, producing, and directing film. Foster carefully contextualizes the popular theatre, explaining that at the turn of the century, popular entertainment included variety, revue, and cabaret theatres, as well as cinema. Now, my own research has confirmed the important role that the late 19th century French actress in particular played in the making, dissemination, and popularisation of transnational theatre and film. Figures such as Sarah Bernhardt from the tragic theatre, Gabrielle Réjean from the comic theatre, and Miss Ducket from the music hall, separately yet together, broke down the barriers between theatre and film. Emerging from the margins of one of the leading theatrical capitals of the world and placing themselves at the centre of the developments in the cinema, these theatrical women ensured that an era that John Stokes has characterised as the age of the actress was also one in which the stage actress circulated in different genres, formats, styles on film. Both Bernhardt and Réjean appeared, for instance, as part of Paul Ducoville's Phono-Cinéma-Théâtre in the Paris Exposition of 1900. They both also featured in short newsreels. More importantly, they initiated and drove developments in the cinema, inaugurating the double feature bill in America with their La Dame aux Camélias, Madame Saint-Jean program. Bernhardt and Réjean also helped to pioneer propaganda film. And also I've mentioned how Bernhardt appeared in Queen Elizabeth, which I mentioned was the first transnational feature film. And here she is in the first home movie, where she's on her holiday retreat in Belle-Île. And so on. I mean, they really just, I know we're not talking about firsts, but they actually were firsts. Okay, so Miss Ducket, the youngest of the late 19th century actresses I've researched so far, is possibly the last of this generation of 19th century women. Working across a range of theatres, I'll just start this probably about here. Yeah, it's silent, so we don't have a live pianist, so just watching silence. Okay, so working across a range of theatres, Miss Ducket made over 40 films before World War I, appearing in comic films, detective films, and serial action films. In some of these works, she also plays all lead roles in a single film. And here, this is the preface to the film where you see the range of roles that she's going to play. And it's quite important this was made during the First World War as well, because I would see that almost as a propaganda film, because she's living in the old Paris that people wanted to celebrate still. And apparently a lot of the French, this is completely nothing to do with my talk, but anyway, so a lot of the French men in the military used to call their bayonets and their guns Miss Ducket. So that, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. Here's another one where she plays herself playing a theatre actress, and she's the 2 characters in the film. So hopefully here she's leaving work, and you see her go out into the streets, as flaneuse, which I like that as well, because normally that's again the male character, imagine that way. And you see her looking at herself, looking at posters of herself in the theatre, and then she actually also plays Miss Ducket, the stage star. So I think that's very interesting. Okay, so examples can continue. My point is that movies work differently, but to similar effect affirms what those of us working on the nexus of late 19th century theatre and early 20th century film argue in the scholarly work, that the stage actress drives creative and social change, and that film enables theatrical celebrity, ensuring new audiences are reached. While Bernhardt Hamlet is a very different work, it also frames the late 19th century actress within the context of early film. I flag, however, that I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the historic representations in this work, because it changes the way we might think of actresses in agency. For example, Riebeck imagines Bernhardt first asking Rostand to take on the challenge of rewriting Hamlet. When Bernhardt performed Hamlet in her own theatre in 1899, however, she was a globally renowned actress standing at the helm of the Age of the Actress, and that's her figure in that statue. Hamlet was a play she had not only commissioned, but a play in which she was the principal performer, director, and producer. Bernhardt therefore claimed the right to self-representation, as well as the right to interpret things differently. She liberated Hamlet from his traditional characterization as a melancholy prince, presenting him as a capricious youth. Speaking in prose and claiming a French literary antecedent to Shakespeare, Bernhardt also claimed Hamlet culturally and philologically. So there's a whole lot of gaps in the play that we see, the Bernhardt Hamlet. Rather than speak to historical legends on stage, however, I want to focus on the attention Riebeck brings to Bernhardt's engagement with media, and again we go to intermediality. Alphonse Michel was a central character in the play, and so attention is drawn to Bernhardt's spectacular dissemination across popular posters. Most significantly, and as I mentioned earlier, the play concludes with an acknowledgement of the importance of film, expressed through a conversation between Bernhardt and her son Maurice. While Bernhardt's film was not black and white, it certainly did not flicker, and I'll just start playing actually how it should have looked on stage. I'm encouraged that theatre makers begin to conceptualize links between the late 19th century actress and to emerging entertainment industries and experiments with screen across the globe. On the centenary of Bernhardt's death, and particularly as an Australian at a geographic distance from Europe and America, I take pleasure in seeing film slowly take its place in celebrations of women on the late 19th century stage. More interesting and important than the spectacle of a woman cross-dressing or her play of physical humour stand the border-crossing potentialities of film. Thank you.